The first pandemic probably began with a moment so small, nobody noticed it happening. A hunter kneels beside a dead animal somewhere in prehistoric Eurasia. Cold air moves through the grass. He cuts into flesh with a sharpened stone blade. Blood touches a wound on his hand. For a second, nothing changes. The fire still crackles nearby. Birds still move across the sky. The world feels completely normal. But something microscopic has just crossed from one living body into another. And over the next several thousand years, that invisible crossing will help collapse cities, reshape empires, alter human genetics, and kill hundreds of millions of people. Long before humans understood disease, disease was already shaping humanity. For nearly 300,000 years, humans lived in tiny nomadic bands scattered across enormous landscapes. Anthropologists studying surviving hunter-gatherer groups like the Hadza in Tanzania and the Juhuansi of the Kalahari estimate most prehistoric human bands contained only 20 to 50 people. That number may have protected humanity for most of its existence. Because diseases obey mathematics. Modern epidemiologists use something called critical community size, the minimum population required for a pathogen to continuously survive. A virus needs fresh hosts the way fire needs dry wood. Without enough nearby humans, transmission chains collapse naturally. This is why scientists believe true pandemics were extremely rare during most of prehistory. Small, isolated groups simply could not sustain massive outbreaks for long. But around 12,000 years ago, humans changed the equation forever. Agriculture emerged independently across several regions of Earth. In Mesopotamia, humans cultivated wheat and barley. In China, rice farming expanded near river valleys. In Mesoamerica, maize agriculture transformed settlements. For the first time, humans stopped moving constantly. At first, this looked like the greatest breakthrough in history. Permanent homes appeared, food surpluses grew, villages expanded into cities. But hidden inside civilization itself, something ancient was evolving alongside us. Because humans didn't settle alone, they brought animals into their homes. Goats, pigs, cattle, chickens. And according to modern disease research, many of humanity's deadliest illnesses originated inside those animals first. Evolutionary biologist Jared Diamond famously argued that domesticated livestock became one of history's greatest sources of human infectious disease. Modern genetic analysis strongly supports this. Measles likely evolved from a cattle virus related to rinderpest. Influenza repeatedly emerged through interactions between humans, pigs, and birds. Tuberculosis may have crossed into humans during early domestication periods thousands of years ago. In 2021, researchers publishing in Nature analyzed prehistoric Eurasian genomes and found evidence that infectious disease pressure dramatically intensified after the rise of agriculture. Civilization had accidentally become a machine for accelerating pandemics. The first cities were biological disasters. Humans lived packed tightly together beside livestock. Animal waste contaminated water supplies. Stored grain attracted rats and fleas. Parasites multiplied in stagnant water. And for pathogens, this was paradise. Every crowded settlement became an evolutionary laboratory. The more humans gathered together, the faster microbes adapted. And nobody understood why people were suddenly dying. One of the oldest known plague sites on Earth was discovered at Hamin Mangha. In the early 2000s, archaeologists excavating the 5,000-year-old settlement uncovered something horrifying. Inside burned homes were piles of skeletons stacked chaotically together, men, women, children, entire families. The bodies showed no evidence of warfare or organized massacre. Archaeologist Mark Nelson and other researchers studying the site concluded the settlement was likely devastated by a fast-moving epidemic so deadly that survivors could no longer bury the dead properly. Imagine trying to understand this without science. Yesterday your daughter was healthy. Tonight she cannot breathe properly. Your neighbor begins vomiting blood. 3 more families collapse before sunrise. Nobody understands transmission. Nobody understands contamination. But humans begin noticing patterns. The people caring for the sick often die next. Crowded settlements suffer worse outbreaks. Some survivors never become ill again. Humanity was beginning to learn through catastrophe, and fear itself became contagious. Ancient civilizations searched desperately for explanations. In Mesopotamia, disease was linked to divine punishment. In Greece, plagues were often interpreted as supernatural vengeance. During later outbreaks, frightened populations blamed poisoned wells, curses, eclipses, foreigners, or angry gods. Modern psychologists studying disaster behavior note that humans instinctively search for meaning during uncontrollable crises. A terrifying explanation feels psychologically safer than randomness, because uncertainty is unbearable to the human brain. Then came Athens, 430 BC. One of the most advanced societies on Earth unknowingly trapped itself inside the perfect environment for mass infection. During the Peloponnesian War, Athenian leader Pericles ordered rural populations behind the city walls for protection against Sparta. Historian estimates suggest tens of thousands crowded into suffocating urban conditions. Then the sickness entered through the port of Piraeus. The historian Thucydides survived the plague personally and documented its symptoms with chilling precision. Victims developed burning fevers. Their eyes became red and inflamed. Their throats bled internally. Some suffered violent coughing, convulsions, vomiting, and unbearable thirst. People threw themselves into wells trying to cool their bodies. Doctors died first because exposure was constant. Religious faith began collapsing because prayers changed nothing. Funeral rituals disintegrated beneath the number of corpses, and then something even more dangerous began spreading through Athens: hopelessness. Thucydides described citizens abandoning morality entirely because they believed death was unavoidable anyway. Historians estimate the plague killed perhaps 1/3 of the city. Athens never fully recovered its former power. Not because the city lacked intelligence, but because civilization itself had created ideal conditions for invisible death. And hidden inside Thucydides' observations was one of the most important discoveries in medical history. Survivors rarely became sick twice. Recovered individuals could safely care for infected patients without dying themselves. Without understanding biology, humanity had discovered immunity. Centuries later, modern science would confirm how important that discovery truly was. In 2022, researchers at the University of Chicago and McMaster University analyzed ancient DNA from plague victims across Europe. Their findings suggested pandemics strongly shaped the evolution of immune system genes in surviving populations. Some humans carried tiny genetic advantages that slightly improved survival. Those survivors had children. Their descendants inherited those traits. Pandemics became evolutionary filters. Your immune system today may partially exist because ancient humans survived outbreaks thousands of years ago. Even your instincts may carry traces of those ancient catastrophes. Researchers studying the behavioral immune system, including psychologist Mark Schaller, argue that disgust evolved partly as protection against infection. The revulsion humans feel toward rot, spoiled food, coughing, bodily fluids, or contaminated water may be prehistoric survival programming still embedded inside the brain. Your body remembers diseases your conscious mind never experienced. And as civilization expanded, pandemics evolved alongside it. Trade routes connected continents. The Silk Road carried silver, spices, silk, religion, language, and pathogens. A merchant could appear completely healthy while already infected. By the time symptoms appeared, entire ports had already been exposed. Humanity had connected the world together, and invisible organisms learned to travel through those connections. Then came one of the deadliest biological events in the ancient world, the plague of Justinian. For centuries, historians debated what caused it. Then, modern science uncovered the answer. In 2013, researchers led by microbiologist Johannes Kraus extracted ancient DNA from plague graves and confirmed the pathogen responsible was Yersinia pestis, the same bacterium later responsible for the Black Death. The people living through Justinian's plague never understood this. Historian Procopius described ships entering harbors filled with dead sailors. Victims developed swollen black buboes around the body. Many hallucinated before dying within days. At its peak, Constantinople may have lost between 5,000 and 10,000 people every single day. Mass graves overflowed. Entire districts fell silent. Some historians estimate the pandemic killed up to 50 million people across Eurasia. A microscopic organism reshaped empires more effectively than armies. And still, humanity remained blind. Nobody understood bacteria. Nobody understood fleas carried plague through rats. Nobody understood incubation periods or microbial transmission. Humans fought invisible predators using instinct alone, but instinct slowly became survival knowledge. People noticed isolation reduced spread. Ports forced ships to remain offshore before docking. 40 days, 40 giorni, the origin of the word quarantine. Long before microscopes, humanity had independently discovered one of the most effective disease control strategies ever created. Not through laboratories, through suffering. And perhaps the strangest part of this story is realizing ancient pandemics never truly disappeared. In 2018, scientists analyzing prehistoric human teeth discovered plague DNA over 5,000 years old, proving humanity's war with infectious disease was far older than recorded history. Which means somewhere in forgotten prehistory, that hunter kneeling beside the dead animal may not have been alone. Maybe he returned home carrying something invisible inside his blood. Maybe a child near the fire became feverish days later. Maybe an entire settlement slowly fell silent without ever understanding why. And nobody remembered their names. But humanity survived anyway, not because ancient humans were stronger than us, but because they adapted faster than extinction. They learned patterns before science explained them. They isolated the sick before germ theory. They evolved defenses before genetics existed. Civilization itself became an experiment written in graves, ruins, and survivor DNA. And even now, your body still carries echoes of those ancient wars. Inside your immune system, inside your instincts, inside the discomfort you feel when someone coughs too close beside you. Because the first pandemics never truly ended. They became part of what humans are.